Increased numbers of providers, big and small, are closing their doors. Yes, part of it comes down to stagnant pricing that simply hasn't kept up with inflation, wages, or the rising cost of delivering complex supports. Hey guys, well, the new NDIS pricing arrangements and price limits is out, and it is a little bit, well, underwhelming, as expected. While some of the strongest voices in the industry, like Disability Intermediaries Australia, National Disability Services, Allied Health Professionals Australia, have been long advocating for reasonable rate increases for providers in line with the inflation rate increases, the government, well, does not seem to be hearing. As per these pleas to the government, the providers in the disability industry, well, they cannot continue like this. Apart from the continuous year-on-year increases in expenses, rising wage costs, operational costs, the rates for a lot of professionals working in this industry remained completely stagnant, or at least not in line with the inflationary rates. Just look at the rates for the support coordination level 2 and level 3. This personally hurts because I'm a support coordinator. I have been in this industry for the last 5 years. These rates have remained the same for the 5 years in a row. Yes, last time they increased was back in 2019. Surprise, surprise, the new NDIS price limits also does not hold the long-awaited increase in these rates. However, what I found interesting is that there was a decrease in rates for some providers, such as physiotherapists, podiatrists. They received a knockdown in their hourly rates, down by $10 per hour. I wonder what these guys have done. I don't know, but something has gone wrong. Okay, so critics and disability organization warn that the stagnation of pay rates for disability providers, or increases that fail to keep up with this inflation, could be catastrophic for many good and high quality providers, with many not being able to continue on and are at the breaking point. So I thought it would be interesting to go over the article from Herald Sun, which recently was posted, and it puts a number to the kind of feeling that we are starting to get in the industry, like the feeling that things are definitely getting a little bit tougher. The article reported a significant increase in business insolvencies over the past 3 years in the healthcare and social assistance sector, which also includes NDIS providers. So this year, there was a 63% increase from last year alone. That's 362 businesses that had insolvencies. And you can't help but wonder how many businesses would have had employees with families, with their own financial commitments like mortgages, and how many people with disabilities they would have had supported and now would have to be linked to new providers, or worse, falling through the cracks. So what do increases in insolvencies really mean? That a large number of businesses are quietly folding each year, unable to survive the cost of pressures, compliance, stagnant pricing, or lack of support. And these aren't always poorly run businesses either. Many are small and medium-sized providers trying to do the right thing, burning out in a system that's growing increasingly difficult to navigate, increasingly difficult. So if this trend continues, we may end up with a system where only the largest, most commercially backed or government-backed providers survive. And that's not necessarily a good thing for participants in terms of choice and control and for support flexibility. So the rising closure rate is a signal that the disability industry is under strain. So leave a comment if you've seen this happen in your local area or your own work. I'm keen to hear what others are noticing in the industry in terms of businesses closure. So let's go back to the Herald Sun article. It points to two main pressures behind the recent run of provider failures. Firstly, many newer operators lack experience with the financial and regulatory demands of the NDIS. And then secondly, the system itself keeps changing in ways that even established businesses find hard to track. Each year may bring updated audit rules, legislation changes, a new digital platform like PACE, and extra reporting steps. Wage rates under the Sheds award rise annually, but the corresponding price limits often lag. Overheads, insurance, rent, cybersecurity continue to climb, and NDI reimbursements can be delayed for months, which strains cash flow. When these factors combine, inexperienced providers are the first to shut, but the same pressures affect long-standing organizations as well. And sometimes it's not even clear cut, not as evident what the reasons of collapse were until it's too late. Like the company Psyche, this is a Sydney-based NDIS mental health service provider employing over 60 staff and servicing approximately 200 clients. They have entered voluntary administration due to internal embezzlement issues that resulted in significant financial losses just before Christmas last year. So the staff were blindsided just by a text message, which is quite brutal, to be honest. Staff had been experiencing delayed wage payments and unpaid superannuation since July 2024. And despite previous assurances from the company's director that the business was stable, employees were abruptly informed via a text message that Psyche would be transitioning into new operations to a new entity, Sky Mental Health Services, which raised even more questions. So the collapse occurred just before the holiday season, which exacerbated financial hardship for employees, you can imagine. Some staff members reported difficulties in meeting basic expenses, such as mortgage payments and fuel costs due to the delayed wages. The article did not report on the participants' experience, though, so that would be interesting to delve into that too. So in this example, there were definite signs of something going wrong earlier on, but perhaps due to poor internal governance, things escalated and snowballed to such an extent that the business couldn't handle it and collapsed. Let's pause on one other recent example that shows how complicated the NDIS landscape has become. The shutdown of NDISB company, a company that managed more than 140 specialized disability accommodation homes across Queensland. Investors were told the model offered government-backed rents up to $50,000 per participant each year. One retiree even received projections of roughly $83,000 per year. In reality, her property was actually empty for 12 months, as per the article. Rent never arrived, and she ended up going back to work in order to cover the outgoings that still flowed to entities linked to NDISB's owners. So when this company's cash flow finally stopped altogether, the Australian Tax Office, the ATO, stepped in seeking to wind the company down over tax debts exceeding hundreds of thousands of dollars. NDISB blamed cash flow disruptions and pointed to more than $1 million in NDIA payments it said were still outstanding. Long, inflexible head leases left many landlords unable to walk away without costly legal action, while strict privacy rules meant they struggled to confirm whether anyone was actually living in their property. The NDIS Commission is now examining the case, and sector advocates say better stewardship was needed from the start. NDISB's collapse matters because it wasn't just an inexperienced startup. It was a sizable operator that still found the combination of delayed payments, rising compliance costs, and complex leasing rules impossible to juggle. The lesson lined up with the broader trend I'm trying to highlight. Even well-resourced providers are closing their doors as the scheme's requirements, payment timetables, and audit obligations grow harder to navigate. In short, the stress points that finished NDISB, payment lags, cost inflation, and regulatory complexity are the same pressures pushing many other businesses in the NDIS ecosystem to breaking point. So what am I saying? Increased numbers of providers, big and small, are closing their doors. Yes, part of it comes down to stagnant pricing that simply hasn't kept up with inflation, wages, or the rising cost of delivering complex supports. That's real. But then there's the other narrative. Maybe it's just poor business management. Maybe some of these providers weren't equipped to operate in a system as layered and regulated as NDIS. And sure, there's truth to that too. Still, where I land is somewhere else entirely. Because I work in this space, I've seen both sides. I know that most people in the sector are good people. They are not trying to game the system. They're not looking for a quick return. They are here because they care about participants, about outcomes, about doing the right things in a system that seems to get more and more complex with each new year. There you have it. If you want more updates on NDIS policy shifts and provider insights, don't forget to follow and subscribe.